We also watch President Donald Trump. He is meeting at this very moment with the president of South Korea at the White House. Let's go ahead and listen in live.
A large group of countries just recently. So I believe that we're going to get that war straightened out. We're going to get it done. I don't know that they'll meet. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. They'd like me to be at the meeting. I said, you guys ought to work it out. It's between you. It's not us. Now, in the meantime, we're not spending any money on, as you know, on Ukraine. We're selling military equipment to NATO. NATO now is taking in, excuse me, NATO now is taking in a large amount of money from the countries. They're taking in 5% of GDP versus 2%. They're paying the 5%. They never paid the 2%, most of them, or a lot of them. NATO has a lot of money. We are selling military equipment to NATO at full price, and NATO's distributing that equipment to wherever they are. I mean, perhaps to Ukraine. So NATO's working with Ukraine. Biden was giving hundreds of billions of dollars, just willy-nilly, just giving money. He had no idea where it was going. It was terrible what was happening. So we're not involved anymore in terms of the cost. We're in for $350 billion. As you know, I also got the rare earth deal done with Ukraine, which was worth much more than the $350 billion. But I'm not interested in the money so much, even though we've done a great job in that regard. I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in stopping a war where last week 7,109 soldiers died, both Russian and Ukraine. It's such a waste of life and humanity. They're not from this country. They're not from any other country other than Ukraine, for the most part, other than Ukraine and Russia. But it's a very important thing to me to stop it. I stopped 7 wars that were raging, one for 31 years, the Congo, and as you know, Rwanda, one for 35 years. I don't have to go into them. You know the list better than I do. But we stopped a lot of wars, including, you think about it, India and Pakistan, which was probably 2 weeks away from being a nuclear war. They were shooting down airplanes all over the place. So I'm very proud of that. I thought this would be, in many ways, the easiest way. I have a very good relationship with Putin. I thought it would be the easiest one to stop, and it's really not. It's very complex. It's very personal from their standpoint. There's tremendous dislike personally between the two men, and we're going to have to straighten that out. But I would like to see them meet first. They'd like me to be there. I may be there. I may not. I'll see. But I wanted them to work out their differences first, because it is ultimately between them. And when that happens, I think we'll get an end.
Maybe they meet, maybe they don't. How long are you willing to let this play out? And if they don't meet, will there be consequences, and how soon for Russia?
Yeah, there could be very big consequences, but we'll see what happens. There might be very big consequences, because this is something that has to end. This war would have never taken place, and for 4 years it didn't take place. But if I were president, this war would have never taken place. There has not been a war like this since the Second World War. This is the biggest thing that's happened in terms of warfare, wars. It's a whole new form of fighting. It's a drone fighting. It's a drone war. No, a drone war never existed before. And we're actually studying it from the standpoint of Pete Hegseth and everybody. We're studying it and studying it very carefully. This is a whole new form of war, but it's a violent war. And there has been nothing like this since the Second World War. So we'll see what happens over the next week or two. And at that point, I'll step in very strongly. And if I have to be there, I'll be there. And we'll either have a deal or we won't. But a lot of people are dying, and I want to get us...
Mr. President, Kim Jong Un wants to meet. When do you want to meet with him?
With who?
You said the North Korean leader wants to meet. How soon would you?
You know, we want to have a meeting. I like to have a meeting. I get along great with him. You know, you were there. We even had a press conference. He had his first press conference. Kim Jong Un had a press conference. This was a little different press conference. I said, have you done a press conference before? No. And you know what? He did great. It was a great press conference, actually. It was historic. I doubt he's done one since. But I said, would you like to meet the fake news? Because whatever you want to do. And they came in like, you've never seen anything like it. And then he said, enough. And that was the end of the press conference. That was the end. It ended very rapidly. But I think he had a good time. I look forward to meeting with Kim Jong Un in the appropriate future.
Would Would you reduce the number of forces in South Korea so that the United States could have more flexibility in the region?
Say it.
Would you consider reducing the number of U.S. forces in South Korea so that the United States can have more
Well,
flexibility?
I don't want to say that now because we've been friends and we're friends. And look, we have a lot of people over there. We have over 40,000 troops in South Korea. As you know, South Korea agreed to pay for that during my last term. And then when Biden came in, they complained to Biden that I wasn't a nice person. And he agreed not to pay. He gave up billions of dollars. We were getting paid billions of dollars. But then Biden ended that for whatever reason. It's unbelievable that he did. But we have a very good relationship militarily. They would say, but we gave you land. I said, no, you didn't. You lease us land. There's a big difference between giving and leasing. And maybe one of the things I'd like to do is ask them to give us ownership of the land where we have the big fort. You know, we spent a lot of money building a fort. And there was a contribution made by South Korea, but I would like to see if we could get rid of the lease and get ownership of the land where we have a massive military base. Okay? Would you go?
Thank you, Mr. President. How are you planning to make? I also want to ask this question to Mr. President.
Who are you with?
I'm Song Mi-jin. I am from South Korea's Arirang TV.
Good.
Thank you so much.
Good.
So, as mentioned earlier, the United States is South Korea's most important and closest ally. So, in this point of view, I would like to ask you and also President Lee, what do you think are the key ways to make the South Korea-U.S. alliance greater?
Well, I think it's great now. I feel very warmly toward South Korea. I will tell you that I have a lot of people in business that I deal with that are from South Korea. They love Trump because they feel I've saved. I think you would have had a nuclear war if I weren't. I think you would have had a nuclear war, North Korea and South Korea. I think it would have been a disaster. You're only 60 miles away from Seoul. They don't even need nuclear. They have their cannons, you know, howitzers, and they have them buried in the mountain. You know what I'm talking about. And I think you would have had, if I didn't win that election, if Hillary Clinton, crooked Hillary, won that election, I think you would have had a nuclear war. It would have taken place, and it would have been horrendous for everybody, including them. It would have been very bad for them because we would have had to enter the picture, and we are the most powerful nuclear country in the world by far. Russia's second, China's third. China's going to catch eventually, 5 or 6 years. They're working to catch. One of the things we're trying to do with Russia and with China is denuclearization. And it's very important. One of the things I discussed with President Putin the other day, it wasn't just that, it was also other things. And I think the denuclearization is it's a big aim. But Russia's willing to do it, and I think China's going to be willing to do it too. We can't let nuclear weapons proliferate. We have to stop nuclear weapons. The power is too great. Okay? Thank you.
Mr. President, I'd like to ask you further question about South Korea and U.S. alliance. I'm Anna from the Korea Times, and I'd like to ask you about the trade deal that's on the table. You mentioned about the shipbuilding industry, and President Lee mentioned about the manufacturing industry. And what other areas or sectors that you intend to focus on this trade deal? Because Korea is bringing in many investments and create jobs as well. So I'd like to know the opinions of both, how to get a beneficial outcomes for both countries through this deal.
Well, we're going to get along great because we really sort of need each other. We love what they do. We love their product. We love their ships. We love a lot of the things that they make. And they love what we have. We're dealing with them on Alaska having to do with the oil. You need oil and we have it. So we have a big advantage in that way. We have more oil and gas and coal and energy than any other country in the world by far. No, for whatever reason, God was very good to us. He gave us the greatest. We didn't use it. We started to use wind. Wind doesn't work. They started to use solar panels that took over the land all over the Midwest, where the farmers said, what happened to my land? They'd have a 10-mile by 10-mile solar field that they couldn't farm. The most valuable farming land in the world, probably the most vibrant in the world. And they put solar plants all over the place. It's ridiculous. Big, massive black fields of solar that all comes out of China. All plastic, all comes out of China. But we have the greatest amount of energy in the world, and we're dealing with South Korea, as you know, in Alaska, and we're going to be making a deal, a joint venture with South Korea. Japan is involved also, very strongly involved. So we have Japan and South Korea, and we're actually the closest. You know, it seems like quite far away, Alaska and, but actually it's right up the little ocean, right up the little Pacific Ocean. It's actually pretty close, relatively speaking. But we have more oil and gas and coal than any other nation in the world by far, and we're going to use it. And that's the thing that South Korea, I think, most wants from us, I would think.
Mr. President, would you go back to the DMZ to meet with the North Korean leader?
Say it.
Would you go back to the DMZ to meet with the North Korean leader?
I loved it. Remember when I walked across the line and everyone went crazy? Especially Secret Service, I would say they were going crazy. And I looked into those windows, you know, the windows, the glass, that you could only see if you looked direct, because there was all sorts of stuff. But I looked in and I saw more rifles pointing at me than you could. There were a lot of rifles in that building. The Secret Service was not happy. You know the buildings I'm talking about? The two blue buildings on each side. And I walked up the middle and I looked in the window and I saw more guns in that room than I've ever seen in my life. I looked at the other side and it was the same thing. And yet I felt safe. I felt safe because I have a great relationship with Kim Jong Un. I hope it stays that way. I think it will. I have a very good relationship. I understand him. I spent a lot of free time with him, talking about things that we probably aren't supposed to talk about. And, you know, I get along with him really well. I think he has a country of great potential, tremendous potential.
Is it possible you meet him this year or maybe next year?
Well, I'm meeting a lot of people. I mean, it's hard to say that, but I'd like to meet him this year. President Xi would like me to come to China. It's a very important relationship. As you know, we're taking a lot of money in from China because of the tariffs and the different things. And it's a very important relationship. We're going to get along good with China. I hear so many stories about we're not going to allow their students. We're going to allow their students to come in. We're going to allow, it's very important, 600,000 students. It's very important. But we're going to get along with China. But it's a different relationship that we have now with China. It's a much better relationship economically than it was before. With Biden, boy, what he allowed that, I mean, they just took him to the cleaners. You know the expression? They took him to the cleaners. I'm sure they have an equal expression in South Korea, but they took that guy out for a ride like nobody's ever been ridden before. Terrible. But we have a very strong relationship, Howard, I would say, economically with China now, getting much better. They have to give us magnets. If they don't give us magnets, then we have to charge them 200% tariff or something, you know. But we're not going to have a problem, I don't think, with that. I think that's perhaps behind us. You know, China intelligently went and they sort of took a monopoly of the world's magnets. And nobody needed magnets until they convinced everybody 20 years ago, let's all do magnets. There were many other ways that the world could have gone. But so it'll take us probably a year to have them. We're heavy into the world of magnets now, only from a national security standpoint. But we have a powerful thing. It's airplane parts. They have many Boeing jets. You know, they had 200 jets that didn't fly. And I've sent them all, based on his word, I sent them all of the parts so their planes can fly. I could have held them back. I didn't do that because of the relationship I have. And their planes are now flying. You know, we had 200 of their planes were unable to fly because we were not giving them Boeing parts purposely, because they weren't giving us magnets. Therefore, we weren't giving them. But we have a much more powerful thing, that's tariffs. If we wanted to put 100%, 200% tariffs on, we wouldn't do any business with China. And, you know, it would be okay, too, if we had to. But the magnet situation, we have tremendous power over them, and they have some power over us with magnets. We're going to have a lot of magnets in a pretty short period of time. In fact, we'll have so many we won't know what to do with them. But you know the story. It's a very interesting history with magnets. And it really is because presidents, not being business people, they allowed that to happen. And they shouldn't have. But we have much more. I mean, look, in terms of playing the cards, we have We have much bigger and better cards than they do. But with that being said, I think we have a great relationship. I spoke to President Xi fairly recently, and at some point, probably during this year or shortly thereafter, we'll go to China. And I think we're going to see a magnificent sight. It's a great country.
Mr. President, on the National
Both
Guard.
you and President Lee actually are planning to go to China. You mentioned either this year or next year. Could you please share more details about your plans going to China and also President Lee? I think
Well, maybe we'll go together. Do you want to go together? We can share a plane. We'll save energy. We'll save a little, the ozone layer. Remember President Obama used to talk about the ozone layer, and then he'd fly to Hawaii to play around the Gulf in a 747.
Mr. President, on the
accept
National
the invitation, Mr.
Well, we sort of meant jokingly, but if you want, you can go.
대통령하고 같이 가면 좋겠습니다.
I would like to go together with President.
Do I accept? Does he accept? If you want to go, I'm going to get special permission. I'm sure you can go. But we're going to have a great relationship with China. I mean, it's happening. You see it. It's happening. They have some cards. We have incredible cards, but I don't want to play those cards. If I played those cards, that would destroy China. I'm not going to play those cards.
Mr. President, on the National Guard, you've talked a lot about Democratic-run cities and states. Would you also consider sending the National Guard into red states and red cities that are also seeing high crime?
Sure, but there aren't that many of them. If you look at the top 25 cities for crime, just about every one of those cities is run by Democrats. And you know, one of the bad things they did, cashless bail, if you look back on time, when they allowed a murderer out that afternoon, you know, he'd kill somebody and then a couple of hours later he's walking the streets again, oftentimes killing again rapidly. Cashless bail is a disaster. You saw we had a news conference today on that. We're wiping it out in D.C., immediately wiping it out. It started in New York, I must tell you, and it's been a horrible thing for crime, especially violent crime. So we're going to end cashless bail, yes. Thank you.
When will you deploy to Chicago, and how long are you keeping troops here in Washington,
A little
D.C.?
discussion. I really want to be appreciated. You know, when we go into a city and wipe out the crime, so D.C., it sounds so horrible. I'm embarrassed to say it in front of you because they don't have anything like this. Washington, D.C., sir, has not had a murder in 11 days. Now, he's saying that's a horrible thing to hear because they don't have murders for ever. But Washington, D.C., if you go back and check, it's been many years since we went a week without having a murder. Now we haven't had, and I would say that Washington, D.C. right now is much safer than Seoul. You know why? Because we have a friendly neighbor. We have more friendly neighbors. You have a different kind of problem. We all have different problems. But Washington, D.C. is a very safe city right now. People are going out to dinner. Restaurants are opening. Restaurants that were going to close are now going to stay open. Friends of mine are going out to dinner all the time. They didn't go out to dinner for 4 years. It went rampant during the Biden years. Just rampant. That's why Susie is very close to the mayor and has a lot of respect for her, but I view it maybe a little differently because the mayor would say that it's gotten better for 30 years, it's gotten better. No, it's gotten worse. And the worst day of all was when we just got to office for the second time, and it's in very bad shape. So the mayor shouldn't be saying that violent crime has been getting better. It's been getting much worse. And the day I took office, it was the worst. And we did some minor things, made it a little bit better, but then we said, look, we got to stop it because too many people are getting killed. And we have not had a murder in 11 days. It sounds crazy. I hate to say this in front of this gentleman who I respect because they don't have murders for years. But we have not had a murder in 11 days. And that's going to go on for a long time. And there will be, I guess, it'll happen a little bit, but we have a very safe city. This is one of the safer cities right now in the country. And in a short period of time, it'll be like the border. Nobody came in through our border for the last 90 days, 3 months. We had 0 illegal aliens from the Congo, from South America, from all over the world, from prisons coming in, pouring into our country. Nobody, not one person, and this is done by a liberal group, a liberal think tank. They do the work. Not one person has come into our country. Think of that. It's been amazing. And I didn't have to go back to Congress and ask Biden could have done this by himself. I did. I said, close the borders. We had the great Tom Homan. We had Christie, as you know, Christie Noem, who did a fantastic job. She's doing a fantastic job. Pete Hegseth has been incredible.
Listening live as President Trump takes questions there in the Oval Office, meeting, of course, with the South Korean president. Let's bring in CBS News White House reporter Willie James Inman. Willie, the White House getting more gilded and gold, it seems like every time we look at one of those news conferences. But let's talk about what's happening on the outside of the White House, and that is that conversation about crime in Washington, D.C., the deployment of the National Guard. Now word that the National Guard, some of them are armed, making arrests. The president making a case before the American people that they believe some of the crime numbers given by police to federal officials are not exactly accurate.
Yeah, that's right. That's part of the messaging coming from this White House. In fact, the Department of Justice is looking into those numbers from local authorities here in terms of those crime numbers. And you're right to point out that some National Guard members here in the district will be armed. We, of course, know that the White House, the president, has ordered some federal agents to fan out across the city. And we also, of course, know that there has been a federal takeover in terms of the police department here. But earlier today, the president signed executive orders aimed at building onto his crackdown on crime. Specifically, the president focused on cashless bail. Essentially, the administration is saying that some of these individuals who are apprehended, put in jail, or then let go. And so the president moving to get rid of cashless bail here in the district, also signing an executive order focused on cashless bail across the country, saying that government funding could perhaps be taken away from districts or states that have lax cashless bail policies. So the president building onto those threats to not only take away federal funding, but also we saw him over the weekend in a Truth Social post say that he could potentially work to send in the military or troops into Baltimore following criticism from Wes Moore, the governor of Maryland. So adding on to the cities that the president is focusing on, we of course heard from the president on Friday talking about Chicago, potentially New York, but now another American city. And I'll note these cities are Democratic-controlled cities with Democratic mayors in all of these instances, and also in terms of those governors, Democrats as well, as we continue to see the president push forward with his crime crackdown, and some of those Democratic lawmakers push back on the president's threats coming from the White House.
Well, and we see in these live pictures the president meeting, of course, with the president of South Korea, saying that when he landed and came into Washington, D.C., that he was able to drive through streets that the president says are now cleaned up and safe. But let's talk a little bit more about what the president wants out of the president of South Korea. What issues are on the table? We know the Korean Peninsula has a lot of help from the United States to keep Japan and South Korea safe from the threat of North Korea. But also the president would like some investment by South Korea into the United States. What do you know?
Yeah, let's talk about those security issues first. That came up in this meeting. In fact, the president of South Korea, President Myung, talked about how good President Trump's relationship was with Kim Jong Un, and he asked for help in terms of keeping peace on the Korean Peninsula. We, of course, know that the president made that historic trip to the region to speak with Kim Jong Un, and the president alluding to another potential meeting with the North Korean leader to happen in the future. He also talked about China as well, saying that he would like to travel to China to meet with President Xi. We, of course, know that there have been some simmering tensions between the U.S. and China in terms of trade. Lots to talk about there. But in terms of South Korea, which has a massive U.S. military footprint, as well as Japan, the president hoping to get more business investment out of South Korea as well. Earlier this summer, the president announced that 15% tariff on South Korean imports into the United States, somewhat of a discount if you look at it one way from the 25% threat. But on top of that, there are investments that the White House says that the U.S. would have control over, some $350 billion worth of South Korean investments, much of it focused on computer chips and biotech, but $150 billion worth of it, Reed, focused on shipbuilding. The reason why is because South Korea is well known for its not only massive, but really eloquent and well done shipbuilding industry. So that's part of the focus here, having those ties between South Korea and the United States. But South Korea also needs energy. Some $100 billion worth of liquid natural gas or energy exports from the United States to South Korea will be purchased by that country. So a lot to talk about here, a lot that the president could potentially bring up in this meeting as he meets with the South Korean president there in the Oval Office, Reed.
And for our viewers at home, we continue having our cameras there in the Oval Office as headlines develop. We will bring it to you on CBS News 24/7. Willie, always great to talk to you, my friend. Have a good day.